Good morning, everyone. It's Sunday, October 6th. Massachusetts Secretary of State Bill Galvin is in the chair this morning. He's our guest. Let's go on the record. Election day is now just a month away, and making sure that voting is safe, secure, and accurate is the Secretary's mission. With partisan politics at a boiling point, is that still possible? Let's go on the record.
From WCVB Channel 5, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Welcome to OTR, everyone. I'm Ed Harding.
And I'm Charmin Zucchetti. With us at the table this morning is Secretary of State Bill Galvin. Now, he served in that role since 1995, and this is a very, very busy moment for you. I know mail-in ballots are on the way out now. This is a big time for you, so yes, thanks for your time.
Thank you. Great to see you, Mr. Galvin. It's always a pleasure to have you in the chair. I just said, with partisan politics at a boiling point, is it still possible to have a safe, secure, and accurate election? Is it?
It is. I mean, obviously there's a lot of noise, a lot of rhetoric, a lot of challenges. Everyone knows the circumstance of the 2020 election. I think we've anticipated this election with some degree of trepidation. But the reality is, I think the local officials are working very hard, not just here in Massachusetts, I might add. But just the other day, the National Association of Secretaries of State, of which I'm a member, had a phone conversation with the Postmaster General, and it was Democrats and Republican secretaries participating together, discussing the mails and how we might proceed on that and the concerns we have about the mails. So the reality is that I think election officials across the country know the challenge they have ahead of us, and I think we're going to meet it.
So obviously when he uses the word mail, it's M-A-I-L. You've overseen elections here for decades now. The pandemic brought voting by mail right to the forefront, but problems with the U.S. Postal Service are raising concerns nationwide, especially with those blue boxes, right? You have concerns about this, it's clear, right?
Well, the concerns we have is, obviously we recognize the problems that mail delivery has generally had. If you talk to anybody in Massachusetts, in any part of Massachusetts, you're likely to find people who've had issues with the mails.
Delays,
or lack of delivery.
Or even further, frankly, phishing.
Well, those are criminal,
out of the mailbox.
Those are criminal matters. I'm talking about simply administrative matters in terms of the distribution of the mail and the receiving the mail. We have been working very closely, and we are working very closely with the Postal Service to make sure that this does not affect the election mail, and we're confident of their good efforts to do that. At the same time, we can't deny the facts, and the facts are there are shortages of personnel, there are working issues amongst them between the union and the management. We're trying to overcome that, or at least circumvent that, to make sure people's ballots get delivered and they get returned.
So what's your best suggestion for people once they receive, and if they want to vote by mail, once they receive their ballot?
If they receive their ballot, which they should be receiving now, over the next few days if they haven't already, and they know what they want to do, they should vote right away. It's postage prepaid, and if they're going to use the mails, put it in the mail right away. If they don't know what they're certainly going to do, and the ballot questions, for instance, could be a reason why they might not.
And you brought your booklet
I brought
here.
My booklet.
Yep.
Read up before you vote.
Do your research.
But the bottom line is, if you're not, then you might want to wait. If it gets down to the end, if you're down within the 7 days right before the election, even the Postal Service has said, do not put it in the mail. I reiterate that. Take it either to the city or town election office directly, or put it in one of the drop boxes that communities have, which are regularly collected and secure. That's what we're recommending.
Let me just add, anecdotally, personally, our son lives in New Jersey, about 190 miles away, and it could take a month for a letter to arrive to our house, which is unacceptable. Former President Donald Trump has called out mail-in voting as ripe for fraud. Is the former president right?
No, he's not. He's made wild allegations about this before, and he's not. Obviously, we're very concerned about that. For instance, here in Massachusetts, we're very careful. The ballots are returned to local offices. The signatures are compared. There is a barcode on the envelope. We're very careful about it. And most importantly, the process is open when officials from the Republican or the Democratic Party try to discover who's voted by mail by name. They can find out who has requested it. After the fact, the ballots will be reviewable, the paperwork will be reviewable. Obviously, you won't know how the people voted because the ballots will have been separated from the envelope, as they should be at that point. But he's wrong. He's simply wrong.
You say the barcode. There was an instance where the ballots in one case were not returned to a local office, but you were able to track those ballots.
Right. That's a mailing issue. issue. That had nothing to do with the ballots or the individuals. It was misdelivered to the wrong local election office. The election office that received it recognized it immediately, contacted the right election office, and as a result, the opportunity was made to make sure they got counted.
So we've just spent a number of minutes talking about situations with the mail. It's 2024. I'll go back to a question I've asked you a million times. Why don't we vote online? We can gamble online, we bank online. Why don't we vote online?
Because you couldn't guarantee the security that
you can't guarantee the security of the United States Postal Service.
Well, we do, I think, when it comes to the ballots that are properly cast. I mean, when I say security, I think there's ample evidence. There's been studies done about online voting simply is not secure enough to do. And we know there are international players who tried to interfere with our elections in the past. You would absolutely be asking for trouble. One of the things I'm most proud of here in Massachusetts is we only have paper ballots. And I don't do that out of any sentimentality. I do that because a paper ballot, first of all, instills confidence in the voter. When I was first elected secretary, we still had punch cards here where the names of the candidates weren't actually printed on the ballot. I outlawed them 3 years before Florida.
You got rid of them.
I got rid of them.
Yep.
And we brought in, and we've kept only paper ballots where you can see the name of the person you're voting for. You darken the circle, you put it in the ballot box, and when we count it, if there is an issue, if somebody, and we have many local races that have recounts, we had some after the September primary, it's hand counted if it's requested. The candidates can see it, the citizens can see it. That's the way you build confidence.
Let's talk about early voting. Unlike the primary last month, voter turnout for the general election on November 5th, that's expected to be heavy.
It's going to be high.
Yeah. The early voting period begins October 19th.
That's the early in-person.
The early in-person
right,
voting.
As opposed to early by mail.
So are you confident the state's 351 cities and towns have the people, the election workers, the resources to do this right?
We think they will. We've been working closely with them. There has been a significant amount of turnover at the clerk's offices throughout the state. We've been holding regular educational seminars. We've had them online and in person. We just had a large one last week in Southbridge. And we're pretty confident that we're going to have the personnel that are there. And we believe that the personnel working below those clerks will also be well prepared.
And what about safety concerns? Election workers, we've seen they faced intimidation,
yes, they have.
Safety concerns.
And even though we haven't had violent intimidation here, as some states have had, we've had efforts at intimidating. But I want to point out that at an election facility, that is to say a polling location, there will be a police officer. In Massachusetts, we require a police officer to be present at the polling location. And that's extremely important. It's a guarantee of actually law order and providing that there's no political activity going on. And it has come in very, very helpful. So, and in most instances,
people are more likely to behave themselves around
and the
police
officers also are wired into their local police commanding station, so they're able to report if there's an issue, an incident. We hear about it directly. So I'm pretty confident we'll be safe.
Here in Massachusetts, we will probably have the final results on most races before midnight. That should be pretty secure, but that will likely not be the case across the country. And in many other parts of the country, Democrats are fighting a new rule, for example, in Georgia, which is a crucial swing state, and Georgia's obviously in the eastern time zone. It requires hand counting of ballots, so that could delay results by days, even weeks. Does that enter a danger territory or no?
Well, I think it's a mistake on Georgia's part, and it's important for me to point out that Secretary Raffensperger opposed this. This is a misguided effort, I think, on their part. In Massachusetts, we count electronically first in the ballot box. The box that you put your card into spits out numbers that we tabulate. But if there's a recount, you can go back and count the cards. That part of the law, that'll be fine for Georgia if that's there. But saying we're going to hand count millions of ballots is not necessary and ridiculely, frankly.
Do you think on November 5th, we will know who the next president of the United States is going to be?
It really depends on how close the election is. Certainly,
do you think it'll be close?
Well, the polling suggests it in some states. I mean, last time we know, for instance, in Arizona, it was 10,000 votes. We know in Georgia it was closer than that. Pennsylvania took several days to figure out where things were at. So if it's really, really close, it's going to take time. And one other thing I should point out, for instance, here in Massachusetts, as long as a mail ballot is postmarked by the 5th of November, if it's received by the 8th of November, it should be and must be counted. Similarly, overseas ballots have up to 10 days to be received, provided they're postmarked. So if it's really close, you're going to have to wait for those ballots to come in.
Right.
But the premise is that it's really close.
Those could be significant numbers.
It could
too.
be.
Yeah. Well, the Secretary, Bill Galvin's in the chair. We have more on the record. Stay with us.